Welcome to In Edina, a program about the people, places, and activities, all from the city of Edina. I'm your host, Lillian McDonald. We bring you this broadcast from the 934th Airlift Wing, and we dedicate this program to Minnesota's military men, women, and families, some of whom work and live in Edina. We have the pleasure of being seated in a place where 7,000 military men and women train right here in the heart of Minneapolis. And joining us to talk about the facility and many different military programs going on is a very experienced military man himself, retired Brigadier General Dennis Schulstead. Thanks for joining us on In Edina.
Oh, it's a delight. Thank you.
And thanks for making it happen to be here today. This is wonderful.
Well, it's happy to have you here.
Now, tell us exactly where we are. Minneapolis, St. Paul Reserve Station,
yes,
right?
We're right near the airport. You see some airplanes behind us from the Air Force Reserve, and this is the training area for Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps reservists.
And we're talking about 7,000 folks come here to train.
Approximately.
And as many as 50,000, because some come in actually from other states to come and train at this facility.
Well, and that would be counting retirees and families and so on. But we have 7,000 people who would really be assigned here for training.
Home to the 934th
Airlift Wing.
Airlift Wing.
Yes.
Right. Wonderful. And these are C-130s behind us.
That's correct.
And that's why we are here, too, and the training is done here, because these C-130s are special. How so?
Well, these are the C-130s from the Air Force Reserve, and then across the base there are some C-130s from the Air National Guard. These are remarkable airplanes. They kind of look like World War II rejects, don't they? And yet they're still making brand new ones, because this is a very special plane. It can carry cargo, it can carry troops. The back end of the plane can open up and they can drop cargo and parachute things to the ground. They also can be used for evacuating medical cases. So these are very unique airplanes that are absolutely essential in our national defense.
These planes are called not just for military service, but also when we have national crisis that may be going on.
Yes,
is that
indeed.
True?
Yes, because these are planes that can carry cargo any place. They can carry people, and they can also evacuate medical.
Well, we thank you again for allowing us to bring your story as well. You are an Edina resident.
I am.
But you haven't always been an Edina fan.
Oh,
Is that true?
no. I graduated from Roosevelt High School, and my goal in life was to beat Edina in something. Now I live in Edina, and Pam and I go to Edina football games and cheer for the Hornets.
All right, and you've built a career, obviously, in the military, but you also have quite a few things. 34-year military career,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Work your way up to
active duty and guard, reserve, rather.
And retired now, of course, Brigadier General, but you did a lot of things in the military.
Oh, yes. Right out of college at the University of Minnesota, I went on 4 years of active duty, part of it down in Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi, and part of it right here in Minneapolis, where I was in charge of officer recruiting for our three-state area. But then I joined the reserves and have done a lot of work in public affairs, legislative liaison with the Air Force Academy, working with the Air Force as well as in politics.
Now, it was your political experience in the military that actually perhaps perked your interest in an actual position on the city council.
Well, I was on the Minneapolis City Council for 22 years, representing the 12th Ward. That's the old Roosevelt High School, Lake Nokomis, Minnehaha Falls area. And thoroughly enjoyed that. But all that time I was on the city council, I was also a member of the Air Force Reserve. And so I would go to the Pentagon or to Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, March Air Force Base in California, or to the Air Force Academy to do my Air Force work while I was still doing my political work in Minneapolis.
So double duty. I'm recalling now on the city council, lone Republican?
The lone Republican. The last 14 years I was the only one, and there hasn't been another one after I left.
Excellent work there with your dual career.
Yes.
But your mission continues even as a retired Brigadier General. Talk a little bit about some of the things you do now.
Well, we have 18,500 Guard and Reserve members who live in the state of Minnesota. These are just outstanding young men and women, and they make just remarkable sacrifices. When you think about how many anniversaries and birthdays and Christmases they've missed when they've been deployed, and I just feel that anything we can do to make it easier for them to serve is not only in our best interests, but it is also the right thing to do. And we'll talk later on about some of the foundations and stuff that do that, but I'm on several boards helping these young men and women.
Mm-hmm. We will mention one because it's a national organization too. The other foundations we'll talk about later in the broadcast are locally based, but your national work at your state of Minnesota representative for one of the national organizations.
Yes, this is Employer Supportive Guard and Reserve. I was appointed by the Secretary of Defense, and I served for 7 years as the state chairman. And our role is to make sure that when these young men and women are deployed, that their civilian jobs are waiting for them when they come back home. And that's a federal law. But we encourage the employers who are also making big sacrifices to do something above and beyond what the laws require. And we have some who mow lawns, shovel sidewalks. Some of them even make up the difference in pay, which is a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal, and we'll learn more about that in a moment. Talk about some of the other nonprofit work you do, just on the side.
I served one term as the national president of the 63,000-member University of Minnesota Alumni Association.
And you're still involved at the university?
I'm still involved at the university through athletics and advisory committee to the athletic director. For a guy who had the lowest grade point average in the history of the University of Minnesota, I was very honored to be the national president of the Alumni Association.
But you'll also be present when the stadium opens later in the fall, and you had a hand, just a slight hand, in helping us bring together a big game.
Mark this on your calendar, September 12th, 2009. TCF Bank Stadium is going to be opening. It'll be on campus for the University of Minnesota football team. It'll hold 50,300 people, and it will be full for every single game. And the first game, September 12th, is going to be against Air Force.
Wonderful.
Oh, we're excited. I'm going to win that game either way. If the Gophers win, I win. If the Air Force wins, I win.
We should mention that you and your wife live in Edina now,
Yes.
and along with all of your nonprofit work and obviously your visibility in the military and in your political world, one of the things you want to take a moment and reflect on is just the change. Or not so many changes, but the military clearly has changed from the day when you were first in it 34 years ago to today.
Yes.
Give us some examples.
Oh, huge differences. I entered the Air Force during Vietnam, which was a controversial war. And back then, a lot of individuals who opposed our foreign policy would take it out on military people.
Yeah.
We were actually told not to wear uniforms when we were back home. Today, people who are for and opposed to our foreign policy, and it's perfectly okay to oppose foreign policy. That's why we live in America.
Free speech, right.
It's all right. They now support the young men and women in the military, and they say, we know that you are carrying out the foreign policy that's set by our elected officials. The other major difference, of course, is that we no longer have a draft, and all of the young men and women serving today are volunteers. Nobody has to serve in the military, and only the very best and the brightest, the best educated, and the best trained are serving these days.
And volunteering their time, which is one of the reasons why you spend some time working for nonprofit organizations so that you can help supplement these families
That's right.
as they make their sacrifice voluntarily.
Yes. Every time you see a person in uniform, I always make sure I walk up and say thank you. They are missing a lot of things. They're sacrificing a lot of things. They're risking their lives. They're deployed for a long period of time, and they don't have to do this. They could quit. And every American owes them a great debt of gratitude.
How many Minnesotans are deployed?
We have 18,500 in the Guard and Reserve. We don't have any active duty bases in Minnesota.
Right.
And so that's everything we have in the state is either Guard or Reserve. We have approximately 12,000 Guard members, Army and Air Force, and approximately 6,500 Reserve from Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, all right here.
Some of the biggest differences that you've seen, I mean, historically, you've seen so much. What would you consider some of the biggest differences?
One of the huge differences is that we used to rely on a very large military, a lot of airplanes, a lot of tanks, a lot of ships, many, many people. We have now reduced the numbers dramatically. We don't have nearly as many airplanes as we did 40 years ago. However, every plane we have is much, much higher technology. When you have higher technology equipment, that means you need smarter, better educated, and better trained people to run them.
This does make our forces more efficient.
It makes it more efficient. They're much smaller. We don't have nearly as many people in the military, but that's why we rely so much on Guard and Reserve. And so when we have a national emergency, we're able to call up Guard and Reserve people who now are using exactly the same equipment as our active duty force.
And the military personnel become members of our community, and in return, our community can embrace the work of our military personnel. They can participate in one of the nonprofit organizations that we'll be talking about in this broadcast, and they can also just get involved in other ways too, volunteering their time as you do yours.
Absolutely.
Denny, thank you again so much for all your service, all your time, and all the work you've done in the military. I thank you.
Oh, and be sure to thank these young men and women who are serving.
There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to support our military and our military families. And these three gentlemen are going to talk about just how we do that work here in Minnesota. Rejoining us, of course, Denny Schulstead, and then we also have Roger Sitt and Bill Popp. And each of you work on three separate organizations that help our military and our military families. Roger, let's start with you. You're the CEO full-time of Sitt Investment Associates, but your passion part-time is to help our families. How do you do that?
That's right. We have an organization called the Minnesota Military Appreciation Fund, or acronym MMAF. And it's really an organization that provides grants to soldiers that have served in the Middle East since 9/11. And it's just a way of saying thank you for everyone who's served.
And how did you get started in this?
Well, really, my father, Gene Sitt, founded the organization, and it was really a passion that he felt that should move forward because he immigrated here from China, and he lived the American dream, and he wanted to find a way of saying thank you for all the sacrifices that our Minnesota military soldiers have made.
And how do we say thank you through your organization?
Well, through our organization, we provide grants for anybody who's served in the Middle East, and we have grants that range from $500 for those who have just served in the Middle East to grants from $2,000 to $10,000 range for those who are injured while they're serving, and then we have $5,000 grants for those that are unfortunately killed in action serving.
So you've carried on this tradition. We should mention that your father passed away, about a year ago then?
He passed away June 24th, actually, last summer. So.
Okay. But this tradition will carry on in your family through the work that you do as an Edina resident and long-term resident.
That's right. We are an Edina family and went to Edina High School, and it's something that we as a family have a passion to make sure that we finish the mission. And finishing the mission is continuing to have this organization and provide grants to say thank you and show that we appreciate what the military has done. And we'll continue this organization until the last soldier is back from the Middle East.
And if folks want to know more about your organization, they can find you on your website?
That's right. Our website, thankmntroops.org.
Okay, wonderful, Roger. Now, Bill, similar but different organization. Tell us a little bit about how your involvement, you too bring a family connection to all of this.
Yes, our organization is called the Minnesota Military Family Foundation. And what we do is we help military families that have a special circumstance where they have a large financial need.
And your organization, you serve as the chair of
Yes.
this organization. And when you talk about a financial need, give us some ideas of financial needs.
Well, particularly when a furnace goes out, that's a very important thing. When the automobile no longer operates and needs major repairs, that's a very important thing. When you can't make the mortgage payment for some extraordinary circumstance, that's a very important thing that helps military families operate and get along better when those payments can be made.
I mean, let's face it, when we have a spouse who, or sometimes both, who may be deployed, someone's got to keep the bills going.
Oh, absolutely.
At home, and things break down, and they may receive some income support, but things do come up.
Yes.
How does the process work?
The military has a very good system in place, and it's support centers. And the support centers work with the families very closely. And when the family has a need, they work with the support center. The support center writes up the need, submits it to our foundation, and then we make out a check, and everybody's happy.
It's a pretty turnkey process then? It can same day situation, or does it take a long time?
If it's an urgent request, we can get it done within a day or two. Otherwise, it probably takes less than a week generally.
Now, this is an important role because if I'm serving overseas, I want to know that my family back home, whom I don't get to talk to on a regular basis, is okay.
Oh,
Why
absolutely.
is that critical?
Well, the way the military operates is generally they'll have squads of 8 people out. And if one of those 8 people in the squad out performing their mission has their mind not into what their mission is because their family at home is having financial problems, it puts the other 7 members of that squad at risk. Mm-hmm. So us helping the individual family helps many military families, particularly when they're out on mission.
And families here at home can contact the military for financial support through a chaplain or also through one of these support centers,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And I want to just say thank you to military families, particularly the spouses and the children, because the sacrifices that they make for all of us are really stealth. People really don't know how much they sacrifice, and I want to say thank you to you for this opportunity to say thank you to them.
Thank you very much, Bill, too. And you're the chair of this organization, and if folks want to find out more about MMFF, where should they go?
The web is a very popular spot, and it's under Minnesota Military Family Foundation.org.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Bill. Now, Denny, last but not least,
Sure.
I mean, these are 2 foundational organizations, but on your own, you also work to help our families.
Sure. All of the Guard and Reserve members have civilian jobs. And when they are deployed for 6 months or a year, they have to leave that civilian job. And my organization, I was the state chair for 7 years, is 125 volunteers, primarily attorneys, business executives, and we make sure their jobs are waiting for them when they come back home.
Now, that seems like that should just automatically happen.
Well, it's federal law,
Right.
so it has to happen. However, we encourage employers to go above and beyond. Some of them make up the difference in pay voluntarily. They don't have to do that.
For example?
Well, somebody could be making $50,000 in their civilian job and $30,000 in the military, yet their
That's a big gap.
Well, it's a big gap, and their rent, their mortgage payments, their other bills continue.
They don't change, do they?
They sure don't. And so that's a voluntary thing that some employers do. Others will shovel their snow, mow their lawns, do other things to make it easier for them to serve in the Guard and Reserve.
Mm-hmm. You actually have, so these 125 volunteers work with you. Some of the kinds of volunteers that you work with.
Well, we have some people who are retired military, as I am. Others are attorneys, business executives, people who really care about the young men and women who are serving in our military and working with the employers to make it easier for them to serve.
And you recognize these employers every year?
Yes, we ask all of the Guard and Reserve members, if your boss has done something special, nominate them for an award. We get almost 800 nominations a year. And we send a certificate to each of those from the Department of Defense, and then we select the top 25. And we have a big banquet every year with the governor and myself giving the award to those top employers.
And we'll also have the privilege to talk about one of Edina's recognized organizations.
Yes, the Edina Police Department was one of those recognized last year.
Wonderful. Denny, thank you very much. If folks want to find out more about ESGR.
Mine's pretty easy, esgr.org.
Wonderful. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your leadership. This is nonprofit work that you do on the side, and you help our families, and I want to thank you very much for your volunteer time on all of this as well.
Thank you, Lillian.
You're welcome.
Yes,
thank
thank you.
you for joining us on In Edina. Well, we've talked about the employer support of the Guard and Reserve, but now we have a chance to see somebody who's really taken advantage of the program. Joining us right now is K-9 Officer Kevin Rapidal and Deputy Chief Jeff Long, both of the City of Edina's Police Department. Welcome, gentlemen, to In Edina.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate having you on the program. Now, you also serve in the U.S. Coast Guard, correct?
Correct.
What do you do for the Coast Guard?
Port security specialist. So I work up in the Marine Safety Unit in Duluth, up on the western half of Lake Superior, and we do boardings on the large vessels when they come through and security issues in the port.
So you're making sure that everything's safe at ports up in Duluth Way. How long have you been with the Coast Guard?
Since 2000, just
Okay.
coming up on 9 years.
Okay, and how long have you been with the City of Edina Police Department?
Since 1997.
Okay, And so you have been deployed, the drop of a hat, to go serve an emergency as military personnel, correct?
Correct.
Can you talk about that experience?
Yeah, the two deployments, one was for the I-35 bridge and the second was Hurricane Ike this last year. And we went down there. The first deployment was 4 days and the second one was 7. So we end up doing shorter deployments, but within the Coast Guard, they're usually a lot shorter notice. So for instance, if I get a call on Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock, by 10 I'm in Houston. So that puts quite a strain on the employer to be able to backfill your shifts when you go on.
And you don't really know when you go out if you're out for 5, 7 days, or maybe even longer?
Correct. Usually the orders are for 60 days, and it's somewhere in between that and 60 days.
Okay, so it's the short notice. Now, what's it like for you when you know you have an employer who's going to back you? What do you get from City of Edina Police Department?
Well, we get great support, and it's just a matter of a phone call. Here's the situation. This is what we're doing, and the response back is whatever you need. We'll be there to support you.
So you've had a couple of deployments, and Jeff, you and your organization here has supported not just Kevin, but other active or reservists that work as police officers for the City of Edina, correct?
Right. We have about a dozen either active or retired military members in our department.
And how do you support them?
Well, we're very fortunate to have them work for us, number one, but we support them by giving them the time off that they need. Like Kevin said, it's often very short notice, and in law enforcement we have staffing requirements, but it's important for us to support them and let them know that we appreciate what they're doing. And so we make sure they have the time off. We try to take care of things at home if they need be, or anything that they had to leave behind at such short notice.
Of course, we know, because we've learned in this broadcast, that federal laws require employers to at least give time off for time to serve when you're away in the military. But you'd pitch in even if that term was extended, and you'd pitch in different ways. Can you give us some examples?
Well, we want to make sure that they don't lose any income by sacrificing the time that they're putting in. So we will make sure that if it involves sick time, vacation time, or some other way of making sure they're compensated for their time while they're away. And like I said earlier, trying to take care of things at home or whatever they may need.
Mm-hmm. Now, people might expect the police department would support military personnel. I don't know, it just seems like there's an expectation there. But other employers do serve through this national program, the Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve program. But here locally, it means something in Edina too, because I'll bet you, as a Coast Guard military representative and as a police officer, you see people in the Edina's community, and it has impact on you knowing that you've got the backing of your employer.
Oh, absolutely. It's a peace of mind when you do deploy to know that your job is secure and that they're there willing to support you. So it makes a huge difference.
Wonderful. Now, as a canine officer, talk a little bit about that work and that role. How does your military training and your police training, how do they lend themselves to each other?
The Coast Guard's unique in that it's the one branch of military that focuses on law enforcement, so they kind of go hand in hand. Our training, some of the training that we'll do here at the police department, we can take right into the classroom within the Coast Guard. And I've brought my dog up and done some demonstrations, and we've done some training there and trying to train people actually kind of throughout the Great Lakes. So they go hand in hand.
All right. Well, listen, Kevin, thank you very much for your service in the military and as a police officer in Edina. And Jeff, thank you very much for being a member of a department that supports our military men and women.
Thank you.
We've been talking about how we can all rally behind our troops and give our military men and women support while they are deployed or working and serving our country. Now hear from two parents who are also supporting troops, two very special troops. We are joined by Andy and Jean Medzis from Richfield. Thank you very much for joining us on In Edina.
You're welcome.
Now you have three boys, three young men, I should say, and two of them are in the military. Tell us a little bit about Matt.
Matt is a Marine. He's just returned from his second tour in Iraq. He is currently stationed in Pendleton. He joined just prior to his senior year graduation in 2005 from Richfield High School.
Mm-hmm. And he's married?
He is married. He surprised us a year ago and told us before he went back for his second tour that he was going to get married.
Okay, and he not only surprised you with a wedding, but he also surprised you with his decision as a senior in high school to join the Marines. And the idea was so interesting that Kevin
Yes.
I assume he's the youngest then.
Yep.
He too took it on while he was in high school.
Yep. Kevin is our youngest son, and even before he started his senior year in high school, he went to basic training for the Army Reserves. And he had that all done before his senior year in high school.
So he graduated from preparation to go into the military, and he's a specialist, right?
Yep.
With the
Specialist
US Army.
in the Army Reserves.
Okay, great. So you have 3 boys, 2 are in the military serving, both looking for or having done terms in Iraq. You know, what's it feel like? I mean, your parents, you've got 2 kids over there. It is a risk.
It is a risk. Every day you wake up, you are concerned. You hope for their safety, and you hope for their safety of their crew that they're working with. It's a good day when you hear from them on occasion also.
How often do you get to hear from them?
You know, I would say when Matt was in Iraq, well, it kind of is before he was married and after he was married. So before he was married, we heard from him probably once a week or once every other week by phone. And then when he was married, that changed. And of course, you know, you're lower on the totem pole. But
You even keep the phone in your hand at all times in case you do hear from either one of the boys. You just can't let it go.
no, it's just something, since Matt was deployed, it's on my hip and it's just kind of always there. And they're different hours of the day. You never know when you might get a phone call.
And we would expect that because they are your sons. And you say that when you hear from them, you can tell how it's going.
Yeah, I was speaking with you earlier. There's a lot you can tell by their voice. You can tell if they're tired. You can tell if they're stressed. And there's a lot of comfort also. Maybe they're just bored, but you can tell a lot by their tone of their voice. And I appreciate their calls very much.
So you support your young men, your young sons, while they're doing their tours. And the community is getting behind families as well. They may not have a son or a daughter in the military or know of a family member, but they try to help. And this broadcast, in part, has given some ideas of how people can get involved. Does that really mean something to you? Do you feel that? Does it make a difference? Or is it just too personal?
I've run into people in my course of work that every day, if they know that one or both of my sons are currently overseas or training, I almost every day hear encouraging words from them. Not necessarily to me, but to let the boys know that they're supporting and tell them to do well and be safe.
Now, Andy, you're a fire inspector by trade. No military experience of your own. The boys' grandfathers both served. But it is still meaningful to you because they're serving their country as well. But you say that families really do have needs.
There are many families. We are fortunate that we're both employed. Our communities are doing well, but we meet with a lot of other families who are unable to even travel to some of these posts when these soldiers return. And Kevin being in the reserve, they often go off for training on weekends or 3-week stints. They will come back and need to be picked up by family members, not from Fort Snelling, but maybe as far as Ellsworth, Wisconsin, or soon, or we may be going to Fort McCoy. Families need to pick up their soldiers who are concluded training. Some of these other families cannot afford not only the funding for transportation, but to take time from work. That's unfortunate. And we as families do rally and try to support
one another.
Those families.
Of
also.
course, of course. And of course, not all of the government equipment that we see issued is paid for by some of our soldiers. So
Right. It's amazing, and this is something that I have learned, is the amount of equipment they do have to buy themselves. So yes, I mean, most of their needs are taken care of, and their food and their clothing, but there's a lot of equipment they do buy for themselves. Their boots. I think the last time Kevin was home, he was buying another backpack, and what is the water thing? The
hydration
kits and headlamps. So there's just a lot of equipment that they do buy.
Well, we know, obviously, as parents, you're proud, as is your oldest son, Brad, of your 2 sons, Kevin and Matt. And we thank you both for your service as you support your sons and as we all support our military men and women. Thank you so much for joining us on In Edina, and thanks for all you do.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for airing this.
Thank you.
We're going to close this broadcast with a quick hello from the Medzis family and the family dog, Polly, to their sons, Matt and Kevin, from their parents, Andy and G.
Love you guys. You rock.
And thanks for watching in Edina. We'd also like to thank the 934th Airlift Wing, the City of Edina Police Department, and the Menzies family for letting us bring you this broadcast from their respective sites. We'd also like to thank our men and women in the military, all of them who protect us and keep us safe every day. And thanks to you for watching. I'm Lillian McDonald, your host. Until next time, have a great day.